Hello, everyone. My name is Sabrina McNeil, and my intervention presentation is on reminders and cues. What are reminders and cues? Reminders and cues are verbal, written, or visual reminders that guide or give direction to students to respond correctly. In the math classroom, this might include cue cards that list the steps to completing multi-step math problems or prompts to use counting strategies for solving number combinations. Here are a few ways to use reminders and cues in the classroom. Number one, give students a 5-minute reminder when moving from one task to another. 2, give visual reminders or cues. 3, use a timer. 4, use hand expressions or hand cues. 5, give a plan up front. So for number one, give students a 5-minute reminder when moving from one task to another. By doing this, students have time to wrap up what they are working on before moving to something else. Many students feel stressed when they are stopped midway through an assignment. Number two, give visual reminders or cues. You can also give visual reminders or cues in the classroom. When you give multiple instructions to students in your class, it is a good idea to write them on the board or give them a copy with the same instruction. Some students will miss multi-step instructions in the classroom. Number three, use a timer. A timer is also a good visual cue and reminder. Using a timer is another way of signaling to students how much time they have left to complete assignments. The timer could be projected on a smartboard or on a PowerPoint. The timer becomes the authority in the room, so you do not have to chase or remind them to stay on task. Using hand expressions or hand cues is number 4. Hand expressions and cues are visual reminders that can be used in the classroom to signal expectations. You can create different hand expressions or cues to indicate different behavioral expectations. Instead of calling a student's name or calling them out, you can make eye contact across the room and give them a hand cue to express your thoughts. For example, if students are talking when you need to get their attention, you can raise your hand as a signal for them to stop talking. Number 5, give them a plan up front. Another cue that can be helpful is giving students a plan up front so they know what would happen during the day. Explain by saying, today we are going to be doing this in the first part of the day and this in the second part, etc. When children have an idea of what is coming up in their own head, they can plan out their day. They can plan out how their day is going to go. Another more specific way that you can use reminders and cues in the math classroom is by the use of anchor charts. Anchor charts are visuals that can be posted in the classroom as visual reminders and cues when completing assignments. These charts are especially helpful when students are learning new concepts. For example, these visual aids can serve as reminders to the steps when completing math problems. Are some examples of reminders and cues in the form of visual anchor charts. You have your behavior cue cards that you see here on the left that can be displayed in the classroom or that can be used as far as like using task cards. You have your math talk poster to the far right that explains the steps when trying to figure out a math problem. And then you have your anchor chart with the math operations that shows you and gives examples of how to complete addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division problems. Is a fidelity checklist on prompts, cues, and reminders. This is a checklist that teachers can use to see if they are implementing these strategies with fidelity in the classroom. They can make tally marks of any error corrections, tally marks of the positive prompts, cues, and reminders. So this is just a good fidelity checklist that teachers can implement. Here is, on this slide, it shows the continuum of intensity of instructional modifications and interventions. And as you see, cueing is at the top under a general and simple strategy. General strategies involve minimal or no changes to instruction or the program being used and are applicable across different academic skills and skill difficulties. The focus of interventions at this level is increasing student engagement and motivation, adding prompts and reminders for the student to use strategies they have learned, teaching self-management strategies, or adjusting other aspects that do not involve changes to instruction. These interventions are usually easy to implement and require minimal time and resources. I didn't really find a whole lot of research that was specifically about reminders and cues when it came to math instruction, but I did find a few articles that talked about the research in that area. There was a study of incidental reminders on prospective memories of preschool children, and it showed that when given reminders and visual cues, there were significant improvements in the prospective memories of these children. A separate study also provided evidence that preschoolers as young as age 3 can use memory aids in the form of cue action reminders to improve their event-based prospective remembering. In another study, the prospective memory of preschool children was compared in experimental groups and control groups. The experimental group showed that the use of cues was influential in the improvement of children's prospective memories, which improve with age. The study also showed that children with better executive functioning had better prospective memory after receiving an executive reminder. The findings in another study showed that nonspecific verbal cues were as effective as highly specific nonverbal cues in facilitating memory retrieval after a 2-week delay. The study concluded that at least by 4 years of age, children can use nonspecific verbal reminders or cues to cue memory retrieval. So here are some examples of some prompts and reminders or visual cues that you could use in the classroom. These are some math posters that I have in my classroom that show the less than, greater than, and equal sign that students can look at in the classroom as they're completing their assignments. I also have different posters like this with the place values on it that students can refer to as they're completing their assignments. So these are just a few of the things that I have posted in the classroom, along with other anchor charts that are available for them to refer to as they're completing their assignments. Here are my references, and thank you for viewing my intervention presentation.